Hey Ecofictologists, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lovis and today I've got a returning guest to the channel. This is Forrest Brown. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good to be back.
Yeah, some of you might recognize him from the last therapy session that we had, and that was to talk about The Overstory by Richard Powers. That was a lot of fun, and yeah, so we've been looking for a reason to get back onto an episode together. So
yeah,
we found
another
that
therapy
reason.
session.
We found that reason in Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler.
Yeah, we sure did.
We sure did, because I mean, the Overstory, there was just so much going on that I couldn't fit it into a book review. Like, I didn't know how to organize it on my own. And in this book, I had so many emotions. There's so many emotions that I can't do it by myself. So
yeah, all the feels.
Forrest, you need to help me.
I love that I've become everybody's like climate fiction therapist now, or at least your climate fiction therapist.
Sometimes, a book is just too much. It is just too much to do alone.
Yeah, this book is so sad and dark. I need to talk to Forrest about it.
Yeah, this is your role now.
Yep, people will always associate me with depressing books.
Oh.
I'm just kidding. Just messing with you.
Well, just, to make sure people associate you with something else, do you want to introduce yourself and
Sure.
what you do?
Yeah. Hey, I'm Forrest Brown. I make a podcast about the most sad, depressing books you've ever heard of. Just kidding. I make a podcast called Stories for Earth, which is just all about climate change in pop culture. So I talk about books like this one. This was the first book that I talked about on my podcast, actually, and I did the sequel to this as well. But I also talk about like film, and I got a video game coming up, and music, and all sorts of stuff. So that's me.
I guess before we get into the book, I want to put a couple warnings out there. So the first one is a spoiler alert warning. There might not be any, but there might be some. It depends what emotional kernels we need to talk about and whether that gives away any of the plot. So
yeah,
if you're super, don't want any spoilers, then go and read the book with some, caution, and then come back and have a chat. Otherwise, just sit back and enjoy. The other warning I do want to give is kind of a range of trigger warnings, because this might be the most violent book I have ever read in all senses of the word violent. So if you are sensitive to that, if that is not enjoyable content to you, completely understand, and you might want to skip this episode and potentially this book.
Yeah.
So I'm just putting a blanket trigger warning on there, because just any kind of violence, the book's got it. Also, I wanted to give a quick shout out to the Climate Fiction Book Club, which is the book club for which I read this book. And it's run by Sim Kern, who is also an ecofiction author, Wilma from NB Reads, and Sage from Sage Reads, and they do this book club together. And I just wanted to give them a bit of a shout out. And if you're looking for inspiration for your next climate fiction reads, then you can go and check out their channels, and there's a Discord for that group as well, and they're really great. They read some great books and they have some great discussions, so just a quick promo for them there. Because I did read this with them and had a lot of these discussions with them as well. So I think that's all of the pre-chat
intro
admin
stuff
out of the way, unless you have anything else to add.
Do we want to plug our Discord server?
Yes, we should.
We have one too.
We should plug our Discord server. I'm here plugging other people's Discord servers. Yes, we have a Discord server. It's called Rewilding Our Stories, and we talk all about ecofiction in all its glorious forms. And We've got researchers, we've got academics, we've got readers, writers, publishers, all kinds of people having great discussions. And Forrest is one of our rewilders, so he goes and finds people.
Yeah.
He spreads the love.
Yeah,
And,
I did not help start it. Just for the record, it was Lovis and Mary Woodbury, one of our other friends who's
Mary
into Ecofiction.
Woodbury
Yeah,
is
a big
probably
name in
the driving
Ecofiction.
force behind this.
Yeah,
Discord
she
server.
holds it together for
She
sure.
really does.
She is the glue that holds it all together. Yeah.
Yeah, shout out to Mary.
Mhm.
And the link to that Discord will be in the description below. Everyone is welcome. When you get to the Discord, just introduce yourself in the dedicated channel and we will let you in. Well,
Yeah.
okay, why don't we start then with a short summary of the book.
Mhm.
Parable of the Sower is the first in the Earthseed series. The second book is called Parable of the Talents. And I think there was supposed to be a third one, but unfortunately Octavia Butler died before she could finish it. And I've heard that the third one was supposed to be more hopeful and less disturbing and dark. So it's really sad that we don't get to see that. The book it was written in, I think originally published in 1993, so it's about as old as I am.
Yeah,
And,
same.
so it was speculative fiction. It's set in the year 2025, and our protagonist, who's called Lauren Olamina, she lives in kind of a walled-off community on the outskirts of Los Angeles.
Yep.
And the world is kind of disintegrating. Everything's kind of gone to pot.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
You know, to give you a picture, everyone kind of carries a gun because it's necessary for survival. And their community is one of the few kind of safe-ish places because it does have this wall around it.
Yeah.
And climate change has kind of completely changed the country, and there's water shortages, and so much so that, you know, you call the fire department because your house is on fire and you have to pay for them to put out the fire because of the water that they would use. So that puts things into some perspective for you.
And then Lauren also has something kind of unique about her, which is her hyper empathy.
Yeah.
Which is like, I feel like when people talk about this book, they describe it as like a disability, but it's like, I guess it's like a birth defect that she was born with, because her mom was on this drug, right? And it like this drug that her mom was on, it was like a prescription drug, but it was known to cause like all kinds of weird birth defects in children. And the one that affected Lauren, and then as we find out, like a bunch of other people as well, is this thing called hyperempathy, which is where she like physically feels the pain and pleasure of other people if she looks at them, like I guess while they're having those feelings or experiencing those sensations. So yeah, as you might imagine, in this particular world or version of our world that Lauren lives in, that's kind of an interesting but also a very challenging condition to be living with.
Yeah, it could be pretty debilitating. This world that they're living in, you really want to have all your wits about you and you want to be able to defend yourself. And if you're affected by somebody else's pain so much that you feel that same pain and people are, you know, shooting
like
each other
on the
and
ground,
killing each other all over the place, then you can't really defend yourself very well. So
exactly.
Especially if, you know, if she does shoot someone or hurt someone, she feels the hurt that she's inflicting. It's just, so that is definitely something that's really unique about her. And
it's kind of a major theme in the book as well. It's just this whole theme in general of empathy, I guess. Which
it is really interesting because, you know, we're always saying that we need more empathy, and that would solve our not solve our problems, but
that would solve the problem.
Be a good, you know, a step in the right direction to solving our problems. Whereas for her, it didn't really.
Ironically, Lauren is not really religious. Well, she is religious, but not the same religion as her father and her parents, I guess. She's I don't know. I guess it's a religion. She calls it a religion, I think. Earthseed. It's like this set of beliefs that she's working on throughout the book. And she's kind of like writing like a holy book almost, I guess you might call it. And it's just a lot of it is like sort of proverbs or like just really kind of succinct like observations and things like that. But yeah, it's really interesting because like this whole time all this like cataclysmic events are like in the background and the world's basically falling apart. She's kind of like writing a religious book and founding a religion, which is another interesting dynamic of this book. So yeah, that was another really cool thing about it, I thought.
It's interesting though, because Earthseed is quite a hopeful, all the proverbs, they're fairly hopeful. They're all kind of about empowering the person to, you can choose your own path kind of. So in this very bleak landscape, she does manage to create her own hope kind of, which I thought was really interesting. But yes, Earthseed is kind of centered around this idea that God is change, and change is natural, and change is human, human nature.
I always thought it was kind of impressive how like she's going through like all these like traumatizing experiences, and like I'm sure things that she's gonna have like post-traumatic stress disorder and stuff afterwards. But here she is writing this book that's really in a lot of ways very I guess clear-headed and actually very practical and also just hopeful. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, for sure. And that's kind of like her driving motivation, isn't it? She wants to go and find people who agree with her or that she can teach, and so maybe it's maybe she can bring about some positive change. So her motivation is, on one hand survival, but on the other hand is very positive. But
that's
the whole
my version.
book, I mean, it's written in her journal entries, right? Every kind of mini chapter or section is a new journal entry, and she kind of takes you through her life, and as she's developing Earthseed, she talks about that as well. And then as they trek north, she just keeps writing in her journal, and they keep collecting people because there is some safety in numbers.
A lot of the book, I guess, is just kind of like the early stages of her religion, sort of. It's kind of her gathering like apostles, if you will.
It kind of is, because she wants to start a little community where she teaches Earthseed, and
and I think
they're going to help her do that.
And I think each chapter like starts with like a little excerpt of Earthseed scripture, I guess.
The very first chapter starts with, all that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change.
I guess a core tenet of the belief system is just like you have to accept change, and like if you don't like accept that, then it's going to be really hard to go along with the rest of what she's saying.
I struggled with Earthseed a little bit. I did find it to be like the spark of hope in this book, because she's trying to do something positive. But I'm with you all the way until the last line that says God is change, because just all of it seems very like empowering of the self, and make your own way, and accept change, and adapt, and evolve, and move forward. And then the last bit is God is change, which I'm not a very religious person. So this might just be my inability to think in the same way that somebody who is religious might think. I'm with you, and then I'm like, why does it have to come back to God being in the center? But I guess for her, it's not that she's not religious in the general sense. She does believe in God. It's just that she doesn't put him on the same kind of pedestal that her father does in his sermons. I got kind of like you change your surroundings impact you, and if you cared a little bit more about your impact on the surroundings, then things would be better, kind of thing.
When I was reading it anyway, I didn't really get the sense that when she was saying like God has changed, that she was talking about like an actual like like sentient like supernatural kind of being or something like that, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
I don't know. My impression was more like it was kind of like how people talk about like the universe, I guess, beyond like your comprehension. That's it may not actually be like any kind of entity, that we could ascribe like human qualities to or whatever, but just like some kind of process or like function of the universe is sort of beyond your understanding, I guess, something kind of mystical.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. That was
take on it.
That was kind of my impression. I don't know what she intended when she was writing the book, but yeah.
Would you join Earthseed?
The funny thing is, because after I read this book, I was really kind of geeking out about it, and there's my cat.
Yeah.
I was Googling Earthseed and stuff, and there is like actually, I think, a religion, like a real life religion that uses this like as its kind of text.
Really?
And there like are actual like adherents to it. Yeah, there's this website called godischanged.org. Earthseed is a real religion inspired by the science fiction of Octavia Butler, specifically her books Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents. In her Parable series, Butler includes many verses from a fictional book of scripture called the Book of the Living, which is what Lauren is writing in this book. These verses have been collected here and describe the basic theology, ethics, and vision of Earthseed. Earthseed's three main tenets are: God is change, shape God. The destiny of Earthseed is to take root among the stars. If you want to learn more about becoming a shaper of the Earthseed community, click here.
I wonder if this was the thing when Octavia Butler was still alive. I wonder if she knew that she actually started a religion. I wonder how she would have felt about that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, ironically, they have a blog post that I just found called "What Would Octavia Butler Have Thought of the Real Earthseed?" That's so funny. Oh my gosh. I'm going to send that to you. Yeah, we'll stick it in the show notes. If you want to check it out. This is so weird. Yeah, this book is so like, it hits way too close to home in so many different ways.
It really does.
Yeah.
I mean, like we said, she was writing for like 30 years ahead of her time, right?
Yeah. Basically.
So, and you know, it is kind of comforting that our world is, you know, it's got its issues, but it's not quite as bad.
That bad. Yeah, at least not where we live or where I live anyway.
It's not as bad here as she expected it to be or predicted it to be. But that was something actually that was really interesting on some discussions on the Climate Fiction Book Club Discord server that we were having, that a lot of people were saying that they couldn't manage this book because it was so dark and so violent, and that it was actually like a mental health choice to DNF it, put it aside.
What does DNF mean?
Did not finish.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So when you DNF a book, I'm not going to finish that. I'm making the decision. I do not want to finish it. And you know, sometimes you get bored of a book or you just don't like it. But in this case, it was like a proper mental health reason, because the violence is just kind of so
it can be a lot. Yeah,
it can be a lot. And if you're not prepared for it, or if it's gratuitous for your taste, like I don't actually think that Octavia Butler did anything without a reason. I think she thought it was necessary, or that it would give you an idea of, you know, the level of fear and violence that people were living with, which it does. But to some people, it was way too much for them to handle. I do think you need to be in quite a good headspace to be able to read this book. Yeah. And so just for anyone who starts reading it and thinks this is too much for me, really fine, DNF it. You don't have to put yourself through this. But
totally.
For me, it was like several times I wanted to stop reading this book.
Yeah, I know how you feel.
It got so dark.
Yeah.
But then I almost felt like I owed it to, you know, like this is not our reality right now, but somewhere in the world, this is the reality. You know, there is this level of violence and fear, and this level of water shortage, and this level of just like no support from the government and the law enforcement, and I felt very heavily my privilege to just be able to be like, I don't feel like experiencing this anymore. I'm gonna put this away.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And so I just kind of felt like I like I couldn't put it down because it wasn't it affected my mood. I was very heavy and I needed a break every now and then, but it wasn't sending me into like a dark place. So I felt that I could carry on and read it, so I felt like I had to almost.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes any sense, but
no, totally.
Kind of had that weight to it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I was like, I wonder if this is like maybe part of the hyper empathy theme in the book, like how Lauren like feels other people's pain. Like maybe the, I guess, like extreme descriptions of violence is just supposed to kind of like try to make you feel that too, I guess, like how she might be feeling, seeing other people in pain. So maybe like these really kind of gruesome at times, like very graphic, like descriptions of violence are, like you said, like they actually do serve a purpose, and it's not just, somebody reveling in, kind of this deviant way of thinking almost. But
I wonder, I mean, sometimes it's a world building feature to make you really feel this dystopia.
Yeah.
And, definitely this would be one of those dystopians that's supposed to scare you. It definitely scared the crap out of me.
Yeah, no, totally. And I know that that's like one of the reasons why Octavia Butler wrote this book, is to, I guess, serve as a warning story to people. So maybe that was like her way of trying to like really get people's attention, and make it feel more real, like it could actually be possible.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, it's not actually that big a leap. Like it is more extreme than it is now for what we experience, and we're very privileged, and I'm thankful that this is not my reality.
Yeah.
But it's not that big a leap. I mean, if she highlights this social injustice that is linked with
that was another really great thing this book did.
And environmental injustice. This concept that the people who bear most of the environmental burden are not the people who are getting most of the environmental benefits. It's a very uneven skew, and it's the poorer communities, it's the under-supported communities, the marginalized communities that are going to feel the brunt of climate change the worst. And this book, it maybe dials it up a notch, but I think it's not that dramatic an escalation. Or it's believable, unfortunately. The fact that the poorer communities are not going to have access to the things that would make this climate changed world bearable, and water shortages would really hit them hard for this book, especially.
And it is kind of interesting the way that she does play with privilege in the book, or I'd say play, but like kind of experiment or just think about it in the book, because I mean, again, like Lauren is a person who's living with a disability, which is not a very like front and center narrative that we always see in, I mean, just like in literature in general, but also just like in the ecofiction and climate fiction space. It's not always like a very dominant narrative. Like I think we always tend to think about like racial injustice and like poverty and things like that, but she really kind of covers a lot of different ways of looking at this. And so that's one interesting thing, is that Lauren is living with basically a chronic illness. And then the other thing that's also kind of interesting is that in some senses she's also sort of privileged, because she does live in like one of the only like gated communities outside of Los Angeles, and she doesn't live in the city center where, like, as we learn reading in the book, like living in like closer to downtown, I guess, is, which LA is like super sprawled out, but it's much more dangerous to live like in the more urban areas. And where she lives, she's still like cushioned a little bit from it, even though in the end it doesn't end up totally safeguarding her from all the violence. But that is like another, I guess, kind of interesting dynamic of the book. For me, I think maybe the most valuable thing from reading this book, which now I really want to go back and read it since we've been talking about it, but I reread the foreword in my copy of the book this morning, which is written by N.K. Jemisin. She's like, so she creates this like kind of hellish world that is terrifying to think about becoming a reality, but also she gives us coping mechanisms for how to like deal with it, and she gives us like kind of instructions on how to survive in a world like this.
And this idea that science fiction gives you like a blueprint to survive a little bit. I see that fiction does that all the time.
Yeah, totally.
You know, when you read a book or when you watch a film, you have the same kind of mental chemistry reaction as if you were experiencing something. And so your brain is learning. You are learning as you are reading. And so this is why I think reading like a mix of, you know, some people think, I don't like dystopias, I'm not going to read any of them, or utopias are just like putting your head in the sand, so I'm not going to waste my time.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think, you know, I think
it's helpful to do both. Yeah.
Read the spectrum and learn something. But I do think that especially speculative fiction can give you these experiences without hopefully ever having to go through them.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point. And actually, this is kind of like a survival guide for
I mean, in a lot of ways it is. Yeah,
very dark, but I think also an important book. I do think that like staring a potential reality in the face can be powerful, and it can be an important thing to do. I think that anyone can or everyone can read this book, or that this book is for everyone? No. Yeah. And
like we said with the last episode we did.
Well, exactly. We were saying before we started chatting that like in the Overstory and Parable of the Sower, if you look up cli-fi books or ecofiction books in general on the lists, the 10 top 10 that you should read, these are always on there. And neither of these are books that I would recommend you to start with. If you are new to the genre of ecofiction, do not. Don't do what Forrest did.
Somehow I made it.
I'm so glad that you continued in the ecofiction genre. I applaud you. I don't know if I would have, if this is the first thing that I read and this was, you know, supposed to give me an idea of what the genre of climate fiction would be like. I don't know if I would have been so invested because I don't know if I would have thought like, oh yeah, I don't know if I can handle this.
That's fair.
Not all of ecofiction is like this. You do get positive stuff and happier stuff, but you do also get dystopian stuff. And I think reading a mix is very important. Give yourself a break, but do, you know, face some of the darker potentials. And that is what this book is a very dark potential.
So I mean, like maybe, who knows, like maybe reading books like this can hopefully reach some people like that who are maybe like a little bit more open to it. But
I mean, that's my hope for ecofiction in general, that it'll nudge people off the fence, you know. Exactly.
Anyway, so I mean, I think that's everything that I had to say about Parable of the Sower, at least in this sitting. I feel like I could ramble about it for hours, but
I think we got the major
subject everyone
points.
to that.
I think we got the major points, and I don't think I could have covered it as comprehensively in just a book review, because your episodes are nice and long, whereas I keep my episodes fairly short. I don't think I could have done this in like 10 minutes. So I think that's all we wanted to talk about for Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. We hope you've enjoyed this episode, although I don't know if enjoyed is the right word when talking about this book.
Perhaps found it helpful or useful.
Maybe you appreciate this episode. Maybe we touched upon some of the feelings that you had if you've read it. If you have, and you're on my channel, let me know down in the comments below what you thought. I suppose while you're at it, you might as well give the video a like and subscribe to my channel.
You can follow me on social media too. I have an Instagram and a Twitter, so yeah.
Excellent. I will leave all the links to Forrest's various platforms down below. And I also have a Patreon, so if you like what I do and would like to support me, then head on over to patreon.com/ecofictology and become a patron. And well, I guess our Rewilding Our Stories Discord server, one more plug, invite link is in the description below. We have discussions like this all the time about books, and yeah, it's good fun. We have good people.
Retweet.
We have, so definitely come and join us there. And I think that is all for us today.
I think so. Thanks for having me on again. It was fun getting to talk about this book that I haven't read in such a long time. And hear your perspective on it too. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Thanks very much for joining me. And I already know that we have another episode coming up at some point. So.
Yeah.
Forrest
stay tuned.
will be back. He will be back.
Not getting rid of
me
that
easily. We have a lot of
easily.
emotions about these books.
Yeah. So many feelings.
So many feelings. Okay. Well. I will see you next week, Ecofictologists. Go read something.